Your colleague just purchased a residence. You know this because they won't shut up about it. They display pictures of their new kitchen during lunch break like it's their newborn infant, the stone countertops, the open layout, the partially completed basement they're going to convert into a fitness space eventually. They employ words like equity and investment with this arrogant certainty that makes you want to launch your meal at them. And you grin. You congratulate them. But internally, there's this gnawing sensation, that silent voice questioning, why haven't I accomplished this yet? What's defective with me? Nothing is defective with you. What's defective is that you've been marketed a falsehood so widespread, so thoroughly embedded in the American consciousness that questioning it feels like blasphemy. The falsehood is straightforward. Renting is discarding capital, and purchasing a residence is constructing wealth. My name is Dave, and today we're going to mathematically obliterate that falsehood, because once you observe the actual figures, you'll recognize that for most individuals in 2026, purchasing a residence isn't an investment. It's a snare disguised as maturity. Let's begin with the phrase everyone loves to deploy. Rent is just discarding capital. You've heard it from your parents, your uncle at Thanksgiving, that individual at the fitness center who definitely shouldn't be dispensing financial guidance. The reasoning seems airtight. When you rent, you surrender capital every month and receive nothing back. When you possess, you're constructing equity. You're investing in your tomorrow. Except that framing is so deceptive it should be unlawful. Here's what they don't reveal to you. When you possess a residence, you are also discarding capital. Tremendous amounts of it. You're just discarding it in different directions, so it's harder to observe. Let's break down where your mortgage installment actually travels, because most individuals have zero comprehension. Say you acquire a $400,000 residence with a $350,000 mortgage at 7% interest over 30 years. Your monthly installment is roughly $23.30. Sounds manageable, correct? But here's the part that will make you nauseous. In year one, you're surrendering about $2,000 per month in interest. Only $330 is traveling toward the principal, the actual residence you supposedly possess. That means $24,000 of your annual housing expenditure is pure interest, vanished, evaporated, thrown directly into the bank's vault. But wait, there's more. Property taxes on a $400,000 residence average around $4,000 to $6,000 per year, depending on your state. That's another $400 to $500 per month you're not recovering. Homeowner's insurance, add $150 to $300 monthly. Maintenance, the rule of thumb is 1% of your residence's value annually, so that's $4,000 a year or about $333 per month. And if you put down less than 20%, tack on PMI, another $200 to $300 monthly. Let's add it up. Your $2330 mortgage installment just became a $3,500 to $4,000 per month reality when you factor in everything you actually surrender. And here's the kicker. Out of that $4,000, only about $330 is constructing equity in year one. The other $3,670 discarded into interest, taxes, insurance, and repairs. So when someone tells you renting is discarding capital, what they genuinely mean is renting is honestly discarding capital, while possessing is discarding capital while pretending you're not. The distinction is that when you rent, you know precisely what you're surrendering. When you possess, the system has convinced you that bleeding $3,670 per month is somehow superior because $330 of it sticks. That's less than 10% efficiency. If your vehicle only converted 10% of its fuel into forward motion, you'd call it defective. But when a residence does it, we call it the American dream. Now let's talk about opportunity expenditure, because this is where the mathematics gets truly brutal. Let's compare two individuals. Person A rents for $2,000 per month. Person B acquires and surrenders $4,000 per month in total housing expenditures. Person B is expending $2,000 more every month. What happens if person A takes that extra $2,000 and invests it over 30 years? Assuming a conservative 7% annual return, that $2,000 per month becomes roughly $2.4 million. Meanwhile, person B's $400,000 residence, assuming 3% annual appreciation, is worth about $970,000. But person B still owes the bank for 30 years of interest installments totaling over $480,000. Net result: person B has a settled residence worth $970,000 after expending $480,000 in interest plus $150,000 in maintenance. Person A has $2.4 million in liquid investments. Whew. The renter won by a substantial margin, and they didn't have to repair a single leaky fixture or replace a single water heater to accomplish it. But here's the critical assumption. Person A actually has to invest that $2,000 distinction. If they're just expending it on delivery applications and impulse acquisitions, this mathematics falls apart. The residence acts as forced accumulation for person B. It's a savings vehicle you can't raid at 2 a.m. when you're intoxicated and contemplating purchasing a watercraft. That's the genuine reason individuals construct wealth through residence possession. Not because residences are miraculous, but because they impose discipline. So why does everyone still insist acquiring is superior? Because the individuals dispensing you guidance profit when you acquire. Real estate representatives make commission on the transaction price, not your long-term happiness. Mortgage intermediaries get compensated when you sign. The bank generates a fortune on 30 years of interest. Your parents acquired their residence in 1987 for $90,000, and it's worth $400,000 now. So they genuinely believe it was a phenomenal investment. They forget to mention they surrendered $120,000 in interest and $60,000 in maintenance over those decades. Nobody has an incentive to reveal the truth, which is that in most markets in 2026, acquiring only makes sense if you're planning to remain for a decade and you have enough income cushion that the hidden expenditures won't drown you. But what about individuals who actually can afford to acquire? They exist. Let's examine them because even they're not immune to the snare. Meet the Johnsons, a dual income couple pulling in $180,000 a year. They're solidly upper middle class. They acquired that $400,000 residence we've been discussing. On paper, they're living the dream. In reality, they're drowning. Let me show you precisely what their existence looks like month to month, because this is where theory meets the concrete wall of reality. The Johnsons take home about $11,000 per month after taxes, retirement contributions, and health insurance premiums. Sounds comfortable until you begin subtracting. The mortgage, property tax, insurance, and maintenance fund, $3,200. 2 vehicle installments because they both commute, that's $850. Vehicle insurance for 2 vehicles in a metro area, $280. Fuel, because suburban sprawl means everything is a 20-minute drive, $350. Education loans from the degrees they needed to qualify for those positions, $750. Daycare for 1 kid because both need to work to afford the residence, $1,400. Groceries for 3 individuals trying to consume reasonably healthy, $900. Utilities for a larger residence, electricity, water, gas, internet, cell phones, $520. We're at $8,250, and we haven't touched clothing, medical copays, or the psychological need to occasionally pretend you have an existence. They have $2,750 left for everything else. Emergency reserve, they're attempting, but the HVAC died last year and wiped it out. Accumulating for their kids' college, not happening. Taking a vacation that doesn't involve sleeping on someone's couch, maybe every 3rd year if nothing breaks. The Johnsons are generating nearly double the median household income, and they feel broke. Because they are broke. They've constructed a prison out of mortgage installments and convinced themselves the bars are equity. Here's what nobody reveals to you about equity. It's not genuine capital until you sell, and you can't sell because you require somewhere to reside. It's Schrodinger's wealth, simultaneously existing and not existing until you're willing to become homeless to access it. The Johnsons have maybe $60,000 in equity after 5 years of installments. That sounds impressive until you recognize they surrendered $80,000 in interest to obtain it. They surrendered the bank $80,000 to borrow capital so they could earn $60,000. That's a negative return. A savings vehicle would have been superior. But let's say something goes wrong. One of them loses their position. Suddenly, they're missing $5,000 a month in income. They have precisely 8 weeks before they begin missing mortgage installments. 8 weeks before the entire structure collapses. The residence isn't an asset providing security, it's a liability demanding constant feeding. Miss 3 installments and the bank doesn't care about your equity. They take the residence, keep everything you surrendered, and you're out on the street with destroyed credit. The renter in this scenario? They downsize to a cheaper apartment, tighten the budget, and survive. They have flexibility. The homeowner has an anchor chained to their leg while the ship is sinking. This is the part where someone in the comments will declare, "But my residence doubled in value in 10 years." Congratulations. So did rent. So did stocks. So did literally every asset class because we printed currency and created inflation. Your residence didn't outperform. It matched the market while demanding you repair the roof. And that doubling in value, you can't expend it. You can take out a residence equity line of credit, which is just another word for going back into obligation, using your residence as collateral. You haven't won. You've just unlocked a new way to owe capital. The genuine question nobody wants to ask is this: if acquiring a residence is such an obviously superior financial decision, why do banks need to offer you 30-year financing to make it possible? If it was genuinely affordable, you'd surrender cash or settle it off in 5 years. The fact that the standard mortgage is 3 decades long is proof that residences are not priced at levels normal humans can actually afford. We've normalized generational obligation. Your grandparents might have had a 15-year mortgage. You're signing up for 30 years, and your kids will probably need 40-year mortgages or perpetual renting. The system isn't defective. It's functioning precisely as designed. It's a wealth extraction machine, and you're the input. So what's the actual solution for the 80% of individuals who can't comfortably afford a $400,000 residence? Stop attempting. Seriously, reject the premise. You're not failing by renting. You're refusing to participate in a rigged game. Let me reveal to you what winning actually looks like in 2026. Winning is renting a place you can afford for 25% of your take-home compensation instead of 40%. Winning is having $20,000 in the bank instead of $20,000 in equity you can't access. Winning is sleeping through the night instead of lying awake calculating whether you can afford new tires this month or next. Rent the apartment. Invest the distinction between what you'd surrender in total housing expenditures and what you actually surrender in rent. Construct a portfolio of index funds that you can access in an emergency without begging a bank for permission. Create actual financial security instead of the illusion of it. And when someone reveals to you you're discarding capital on rent, ask them how much they surrendered in interest last year. Ask them how much they expended on maintenance. Ask them if they've calculated their actual return versus if they invested that down installment in 2020. Observe them get uncomfortable because nobody actually runs those figures. They just repeat what they were told. The mathematics is screaming the answer. Most individuals just don't want to hear it because it contradicts the story we've been marketed since childhood. But you're smarter than that. You're doing the actual calculation instead of following the script. And that's how you win. Not by acquiring the residence that bankrupts you, but by constructing wealth quietly while everyone else is residence poor and pretending they're not. Here's the mathematics that'll actually set you free. You take that $50,000 you didn't dump into a down installment. You invest it in a boring S&P 500 index fund. Historically, that returns about 10% annually. In 30 years, without adding another dollar, that $50,000 could grow to around $872,000. But you're not just sitting on that initial investment. Remember, you're also accumulating the distinction between what homeowners surrender in total housing expenditures versus what you surrender in rent. Let's be conservative. Say you're accumulating $500 a month by renting instead of possessing. When you factor in maintenance, insurance, property taxes, and PMI, That's $6,000 a year. You invest that too. After 30 years, that stream of investments transforms into an additional $1.1 million. Your total, nearly $2 million. Meanwhile, your friend who acquired the 500,000 residence, their residence might be worth $1.2 million after 30 years of appreciation. Sounds beneficial until you recognize they surrendered $595,000 in interest alone on their mortgage. They expended $150,000 on maintenance. They surrendered $180,000 in property taxes. Their actual profit after selling, maybe $275,000 if they're fortunate. You have $2 million in liquid assets. They have $275,000 trapped in a residence they have to sell to access. You won by a factor of 7. But nobody discusses this because the real estate industrial complex would collapse if individuals did the honest mathematics. The psychological grip of residence possession runs deeper than capital, though. We've been programmed since childhood. Every sitcom displays a family in a residence. Every movie about success features someone acquiring their dream residence. The message is clear. Adults possess residences, children rent apartments. This narrative is so embedded that rejecting it feels like rejecting maturity itself. Your parents will worry about you. Your friends will subtly imply you're not performing as well as them. Society will treat you like you're stuck in some transitional phase even when you're 40. But here's what they're not observing. You have options. When your position offers you a position in another city, you can take it. You provide 30 days notice and leave. The homeowner, they're anchored. They have to sell in a down market or become an accidental landlord. When the neighborhood begins declining, you can move. The homeowner is trapped observing their investment deteriorate. When you lose your position, you can downsize to a cheaper place immediately. The homeowner has to keep making that $43.67 installment or lose everything. Liquidity is freedom. Equity is prison with superior PR. The final piece individuals miss is opportunity expenditure. That 500,000 residence doesn't just cost 500,000. It costs every single thing you couldn't accomplish because you acquired the residence. It's the business you couldn't launch because your capital was locked in your foundation. It's the career risk you couldn't take because you had to make the mortgage. It's the year abroad you couldn't expend because you were tethered to property. When you rent, your capital stays flexible. You can deploy it toward opportunities as they arise. The homeowner's capital is fossilized. It's concrete, drywall, and wood. It doesn't respond to market conditions. It doesn't pivot. It just sits there demanding more capital for upkeep. Some of you are still resistant. You're contemplating about your uncle who acquired in 1995 and generated a fortune. Sure, individuals who acquired residences when they cost 2 times annual income instead of 6 times did fine. But that world doesn't exist anymore. You're not your uncle. You're playing a different game with different rules. And pretending the old playbook still functions is how you end up drowning. The genuine flex in 2026 isn't possessing property, it's having options. Walk into any room of successful homeowners and observe how they talk. They brag about their equity and their square footage, but listen closer. They're complaining about the special assessment. They're stressed about the HVAC. They're worried about the market. They're not free. They're just heavily leveraged. You, the renter with $200,000 in index funds, you're sleeping fine. You're not worried about hail damage or foundation cracks. You're not comparing contractor quotes. You're compounding wealth while they're compounding anxiety. This isn't about surrendering on residence possession forever. Maybe in 10 years the market corrects. Maybe your income triples. Maybe you move somewhere housing is actually affordable. But right now, today, forcing yourself into a $500,000 mortgage you can't afford isn't constructing wealth. It's constructing a very expensive snare decorated to look like success. Run your genuine figures. Calculate what you'd actually surrender in total housing expenditures. Compare that to your rent plus investing the distinction. Be honest about your income stability and your actual expenses. And if the mathematics says renting wins, then rent. Not because you failed, but because you refused to fail by following guidance designed for someone else's economy. Wealth isn't about what you possess. It's about what you keep. what you control, and whether you can breathe without checking your account first. So here's your actual homework, and it's simpler than you think. Pull up a spreadsheet tonight. Column A, what you currently surrender in rent, plus what you could invest, with the distinction if you didn't acquire. Column B, the genuine total monthly expenditure of possessing that residence you've been eyeing. Not just the mortgage, but everything we discussed. Run it forward 10 years, then 20. Observe which figure is bigger. That's not opinion, that's just arithmetic. I'm being honest with you when everyone else won't be. You're going to feel pressure. Your mother will ask when you're acquiring. Your colleague will keep displaying you their doorbell footage like it's cinema. Let them. You're not playing their game anymore. You're playing the one where you actually win, which means having capital that moves when you need it to move, instead of capital that sits in walls demanding more capital to keep existing. The housing market will keep pretending prices make sense. Real estate representatives will keep revealing to you it's always a beneficial time to acquire. Banks will keep approving mortgages that shouldn't exist. But you're different now. You've observed the mathematics they don't want you to observe. You know the actual expenditure of that American dream they're marketing. And you know it costs way more than they're advertising. Rent the place that doesn't make you anxious. Construct the portfolio that actually compounds. Sleep without wondering if you can afford the roof when it fails. That's not surrendering up. That's winning a game most individuals don't even recognize they're losing until they're 50 and still making installments on a residence that possesses them more than they possess it. Genuine wealth is being able to declare no to things that look like opportunities but calculate out as snares. You just learned how to declare no. Now go use it. If this mathematics changed how you see homeownership, smash that like button and let me know you're building real wealth with Winds of Thought. Equity is prison with better PR than renting. Your house doesn't own you less than you own it.